Welcome to Return on Insights, the show where candid conversations with bold founders and leaders spark actionable insights for your business. I'm David Lindover.
And I'm Erin Abatangelo. Each week, we pull back the curtain with leaders who are scaling teams and shaping the future, sharing the insights that create impact far beyond the bottom line.
Discover how high-performing companies build enduring cultures, inspire teams to think bigger, and turn vision into action. If you see storytelling as your strategic advantage, you're in the right place. Welcome to the show. Today we're joined by Anthony Bay, CEO and founder of Techquity. Anthony shares how his team helps startups and fast-growing companies make smart tech investments, cut technical debt, and scale with confidence. With years of experience leading major tech initiatives, Anthony reveals how investors, CEOs, and boards can use strategic technology advice to reduce risk and boost growth. Plus, we dive into Techquity's hands-on fractional CTO model and how it delivers real results for clients. Welcome, Anthony.
Thank you very much, David. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for taking time. So my first question is, what motivated you to found Techquity, and how does it differentiate itself in the tech advisory space?
Well, sure. Thanks for asking. So, really, I would say two main things. Talk about it from the customer side first, classic Amazon work backwards. So, in the world we live in today, any great company, any company that wants to be successful needs to understand how to be a great tech company, or certainly great at tech in some way or another. And for the most part, business leaders, CEOs, founders, business owners, and investors are not sophisticated tech leaders. That's not the background they have. They're very good at running a business. They know the market. They know the customer. They may be very good investors, but they don't understand the underlying dynamics of successful tech and scaling. So there is a need, and that was kind of the driving need. We started with investors and their companies they invested in. On the, if you will, product side, the team, people who, I would say people in the world I come from, if you've been successful, you get to a place in your career where you've been at one of the big tech companies or one of the other big names in tech that may not be, the big five or six. You get to a place in life where you've learned a lot, you've been successful enough, and you're looking for a different life model that you could certainly keep working at one of those big companies and and have that as a life. You could go do a startup or be part of an early stage company yourself, but we all know what that means. There is no halfway, there's no balance involved in running your own business and scaling a company. You're all in, and so not everyone wants to do that, at every point in life. And the last one is they want to be a consultant, they want to advise, they want to help people. It's very hard to do alone. So the basic premise of Techquity is to matchmake that need. So Techquity is a collective of senior tech leaders, product and engineering leaders who've built products that we all know of, whether it's Alexa or Google Maps or Prime or a lot of other things, who want to be involved and want to help, and want to be available to work on projects. So it's a set of people, and expertise and skills that you could never hire, but for the most part, people would love to have access to as a brain trust. And so that was the genesis of Techquity. We've been around for about 5 years, and so far I think it's working well for customers, and it's working well for us. So.
Very good. So how does Techquity approach tech spend optimization for startups and growth companies?
Yeah, I think so. We talked about this a little before. So the the simplest way for me, the metaphor is I think of tech health like health. And so in your actual health, in your life, in your physical body, you know, most people want to have a long healthy life, and live well, and live healthily, have a good health span in addition to lifespan. And so you need to pay attention to signals and symptoms, and ideally the symptoms, not treat symptoms, but treat underlying causes. So tech is very, in a lot of ways, very similar. And so, spending is a symptom. You go, God, I don't know if we're spending well. It's like, I don't know if we're eating well. But you can think about those things in the context of, what are healthy metrics, and start to think about that. But most business owners don't have metrics to compare to. They don't have the expertise and the history to say, how are we doing? So, spending is a symptom, missing deadlines is a symptom, slow product iteration is a symptom, um, you know, uh, erratic performance. So all these are symptoms. And so, spending is one people care about because it's money.
Got it. What are the biggest tech risks companies face as they scale? And most importantly, how can they be mitigated?
Yeah. So in a sense, the biggest risks are people, because everything that comes out of everything your organization building is about people and about leaders, and we're not at the point yet where large language models are going to build and run your apps for you. So there was a tool. There's a whole interesting dialogue about about AI as a tool versus AI as an entity. But fundamentally, it starts and continues with people. Given the objectives that you have as an organization, given the types of problems that you're trying to solve for customers, given the investments that you can make, who are the people that can help you? And so, a metaphor I sometimes use is, if you're looking to build a single family home, there's a lot of people around, a lot of general contractors can do that. If you're looking to build a 10-story building, smaller number of people, and it's a very different skill set. If you're looking to build a 100-story building, it's a much narrower set of people. And how you think about everything is very different. And so um ultimately, that's my lesson here is it starts with having people in key technical leadership positions, product and engineering, who um, who have either been on the journey before, ideally, or have been on related journeys and have the headroom to scale. It's also, again, a metaphor. I like metaphors, but if you look at professional sports teams, ultimately it comes down to the players and how well they're coached. Well coached players who are not at the right level are not going to win Stanley Cup. And great players who are not well organized and not well coaches also don't win. So there's, it's a team execution ultimately, that we find. All the tech is an artifact of how the people are behaving.
Very appropriate metaphors, especially the Stanley Cup, the Florida Panthers. What a collection of players, but it's the collection and it's the coach, in my opinion, that
Yep.
make them winners, consistent winners. So, moving on, how do you work with CEOs and boards to align tech strategy with business goals?
So, again, great question. So it's a follow on to what, we just talked about. And that is that the first questions you start with are, what are you trying to achieve? Not all businesses have objectives of growth, high growth. So it starts with, are you trying to build something that serves tens of millions of people? Are you trying to build something that's a highly secure application for a small number of business users? What's the business problem you're trying to solve? And what are the types of leaders that you need that are going to be successful in that? So for investors, people invest in teams. You need great ideas, but it's the leadership and the team that wins. And so when we talk with a CEO or the board or the investors, it's a combination of those things. What are the objectives? Where are you trying to go? And then, we will come in and take a look at the leadership that you have, how it's organized, how the great people badly organized, also, back to your Florida Panthers one, also doesn't win. And what you find is in a lot of cases, if it comes down to a financial people or sales people, um, most investors and CEOs sort of understand enough of those functions to be able to have good instincts about people. And the other thing is well, in sales the metrics are relatively straightforward. Did it work, or did you sell or didn't you? And on with a CFO or with somebody running finances, again, how are you doing? And so a lot of times people are lacking the types of benchmarks and metrics. A lot of times it's very anecdotal, or I think I have a really smart TTO and they tell me everything is fine and I don't know. And so you know the challenge is figuring out what is it you need and how you're going to measure people, and then how do you hold them accountable.
Yeah, I can see your collective playing a big role there. Can you describe the role of fractional CTOs and how your company, Techquity, integrates with client teams?
Yeah, so we've started using the term co-pilot instead of fractional, because when we started out, we thought what people needed was okay, someone to come in and essentially bridge. You'll be the person in the seat for some period of time. So a fractional, but in a lot of cases you don't need a full-time person, and and you're looking for someone while you're trying to hire. What we found is that what is a teaching people to fish is a better is a better model than coming in and fishing for them, if you will. And so what we do is we use the term co-pilot. So we will come in, we will get we will have somebody in the cockpit with you, but they're not the captain of the plane. And so it's either we will be that for the CEO and help them manage the tech organization they're trying to build, including hiring and setting metrics and process, but they're the leader, so we're the muse is the wrong term. um, or we will do that with their functional leaders. We will ride alongside, a CTO or a chief product officer or a chief security officer or whatever the right title is in that organization. And again, take the expertise that we have and help them. So it's a mentoring role, it's a coaching role. Um, but it's a hands-on role. So we're in the cockpit, and whereas a lot of consultants, well, here, go do this, and here's a nice template, here's a nice deck, here's a nice plan, and that's not where rubber meets the road. Rubber meets the road, in execution. And so, well, that's the model we found where we can add the biggest value.
Have you found the collaborative model that that it really works well in most cases?
Yeah, our clients would have to speak for us, but yes, it's um as I said, we evolved from playing this kind of interim role where we were in the seat. And the problem with that is it's sort of like a substitute teacher in a school. Even if you're a good substitute teacher, the kids know you're there temporarily. The period of bonding, it's not optimal. It's better than nothing, of course, because then you have some leadership. But what's a far better thing to do is identify somebody who can be inside the company, who knows the culture, who knows the people, who we can help through a transition while you're trying to find or hire. It may be that person can scale up into the role, but they're not there yet. It may be that what you need is a person who's going to fill a role while you go search. We work with search firms and companies, because what we found, for all the reasons I said, is most CEOs do not have the internal skill sets to hire good people. They don't. If you come out of Amazon or Google, Microsoft, Apple, any of those, or the next tier, you're relentless about recruiting and hiring and interviewing. And so that discipline, so we bring that discipline. We get very involved in hiring, job descriptions, screening, interviews, debriefs, so that the person you hire needs to be a great culture fit, but we can make sure they're a great skill fit. So it's so far it's worked very well. That's why we evolved over time into this co-pilot model.
What lessons from your time at Amazon, Microsoft, and Apple have you applied to advising startups or, the larger companies that you work with as well?
I think the one of the powerful things about being able to be part of one of those companies is the scale and impact. So when you're working on something that's going to, well, you're going to build something that you want to have add value to hundreds of millions of people, tens of millions of people. And when you are responsible for delivering that, 7 by 24 all the time, you learn, it comes back to the skyscraper metaphor is there aren't that many people in the world who've built things at scale. And so you learn a lot about, um, you learn a lot about the systems that work. Those companies are all quite systematic. They each have their own models, but they're very systematic and thoughtful about how you execute relentlessly. And sometimes one of our partners says, "Oh, the way a lot of startups are organized technically is like a kid's soccer team. Everybody swarms at the ball and then they run." And so you learn the discipline and the importance and the priority of, and you're also surrounded by people who hold you accountable. That's one of the great things in those kinds of environments. So when I use the term co-pilot, the idea is we can bring a lot of that history expertise, scars, lessons from what didn't work, and to help companies. It's like you want to pilot it. You want somebody in the cockpit who's had 15,000 hours when when you've got 200 or 300 is, what are the things to watch out for? What are the storms? Amazon calls it look around corners and dive deep. And what we find is a lot of times that discipline is just not there. If you didn't, if you weren't, if you weren't trained, then you don't have that discipline. Again, you can see professional sports metaphors. No one got to play on, no one got to play professional hockey without many, many years of, of no matter how good you are, it's the discipline. And so there's a lot of, similar metaphors. They're different, but, you know, you want someone to help you who has that.
Absolutely. It's fascinating to think about the systems in these companies and how they operate at such scale and continue to scale and continue to be so critical to our lives.
Yeah.
And there's, they replicate it. It's unbelievable.
Yeah,
I
there
could
was
talk to you.
on that note. So just the discipline, from Amazon point of view. While I was at Amazon, and I left Amazon a number of years ago, the data showed that I think it was like a 100 millisecond different in response time in the store led to like a 5% reduction in sales, or inverse. So speeding up speeding up, because a lot of times people are worried about the look and the feel and and how to
Yeah,
design and everything else, and Amazon's like, no. It was Google's the same thing. You want it, you want speed. And you look at the minimalist design of Amazon.com even today, and the minimalist design of Google search. And so little things, is performance matters. And so the discipline to tune like that is, yes, I just found it just remarkably impressive.
I find it remarkably impressive, and I use Amazon all the time. And I'm
Yeah.
so impressed because in my other world, design principles are pretty important for the companies that I work for, and yet when I look at Amazon, it's as simple can get, and they continue to simplify it and make it easier to buy and buy quickly. So
But the design, that comes back to the question you asked earlier, is design has to be for anything, design has to be bespoke towards what you're trying to do. And, and so, there, all these things come back to who are you trying to serve, what matters to them, and how do you design your technology and systems and delivery to deliver that to your customers.
absolutely. I often remind one of my designers anyway, it's not a fashion show. We're providing content. Let's make it as easy as possible for people to consume and understand. And that's the litmus test for us. Um, been a very interesting conversation. My final question. Actually, I have two more questions. So, how
Okay.
important is technical due diligence in investment decisions, and what should investors look for? And I'll say, as an aside, um, in the outreach that I've been executing for the last 8 or 9 months to generate people like yourself attending these podcasts, um, technical debt has been a conversation that has performed very, very well. Um, and so I'm curious about your answer around the importance of technical due diligence in investment decisions, and what should investors be looking for?
So it's critical. It's, but it's, I would say it's not done anywhere near the level it needs to be. When investors are making a decision, they'll do really exhaustive financial due diligence and legal due diligence and customers and margins and market, but surprisingly light touch on tech. The quality of the leaders, how did, this, everything related to, I'll call it a tech health assessment. So it's critical. And, um, and it's not that it's not done. I would just say the state of the art is still pretty basic. A lot of times it's more of a checklist. We'll hire some firm and they'll come in, and they're not very senior, I will say, compared to like the experience that we have. And it's oftentimes a lot of checklists. Okay, do they have this? Do they have this? Do they have this? And ours is more of we think of it more as a detective work, is what are you start with a set of questions and you look. So it's critical because ultimately, again, depending on the type of the investment, but any company that is dependent on tech execution for its value creation, which is most, not all, but most, um, it's a critical lever. So first thing is, it's critical, and I would say for the most part, it's not done at the level that it should be. Um, and what the second part was, kind of what to watch out for, or what were the
Yeah, what should investors look for? I mean,
yeah.
I think that's kind of like what what problems should they be, or what markers should they be looking at?
I think it reflects the conversation that we have been having, which is a lot of times people will want to, how is the code? Is the code going to scale? But, the issue is often, leadership, organization, process, um, and then in architecture and things. But you kind of start with the people, if you will, and work backwards. The places things break down are like we described, where normally, and again, it depends on the type of investor, but for the most part, if you're investing in a company, you're betting on growth, because otherwise, why would you invest? And so if you're betting on growth, the key things you need to ask and be able to credibly answer are, does the company have the right foundations for growth? People, process, um, technical decisions, architecture, and things like that. Because that's where most things fail. Is if they're going to fail, and it's not that we haven't found the right audience. It's if they break, it's they didn't scale well. Often you have something that looks nice, does very well at low usage, but when you blow it up with a lot more usage, breaks. And back to your technical debt, and the challenge you have is, if you back to discipline, if you don't have an understanding, if it's not well documented, and developers like to work on new cool things. Nobody wants to
Yep.
work on the old thing. And frankly, that person who built that, they're not here anymore. And so there's a you can end up in a situation where technical debt, which most people really don't understand. Technical debt becomes technical debt is how much of your engineering resource, assume you have a capacity of 100 with all your people, how much of the capacity is dedicated to just keeping your thing running, let alone building any new features. And so, it's debt service. Technical debt is, that's where it came from. So, but understanding that at any granularity is hard. It's not like financial debt. it's very hard to understand, what the nature is of tech debt. And that comes back to why diligence is so important.
Great. Final question. You've been very gracious with your time. I appreciate it. What trends in AI and emerging tech are you most excited about? And how should companies prepare? That's pretty open ended, I know.
Yeah. So emerging tech could be a bunch of different things. So, um, as it relates to AI, there are a lot of, there's a range of debates that people love to have. And so the question is kind of how do you cut through that to what really matters? And the AI of the moment, forgetting whether forgetting the future of what of artificial general intelligence, all those things, but today the biggest question is, how can you take advantage of the things that exist and are emerging? How do you get on the train? The biggest issue that companies face, in my experience, and they face it in hindsight, is we were not learning. We did not get on the curve, whether it was mobile, whether it was cloud computing, whether it was the internet. As these generations come along, and AI is different in a bunch of ways, but the same in another. And the point is, the application companies that learn how to use these tools early are at an advantage compared to others. So, the risk you have, by not getting on the curve, learning, exploring both yourself, it's not just tell someone else, um, is that you will miss opportunities that relate to your business, and other people will find them. So it's simple answer is it's not hard to get on the curve, start exploring, start testing, having people in your organization try the different things. So just don't wait. That's the first thing. The second thing is, and I don't know the exact number, but something like 70 or 80% of AI projects fail. And so that you want to think about these things. There's the learning process, and then there is the building. And I think n- there's a feeling right now in a lot of boardrooms and CEOs is I have to be doing something with AI, so let's do something. The first step, figuring out what to do and then how to do it is sort of like, as opposed to, you do ready aim fire as opposed to fire first and then it's so there's, you get on the curve, you start thinking, learning, and then design projects that are likely to be successful. So that would be the thing.
70 to 80% failure rate.
Of AI projects in companies. Yeah, I think that was a McKinsey study. I could be wrong. I'm guessing I'm partially wrong, but the point being is there are a lot of knee-jerk reactions. We need to do something. And so what looks like a cool little prototype breaks down as a project. So when I talk about projects, it's not you and I, sitting up one night and playing with ChatGPT. It's designing something you're going to actually implement in your business as projects. And the failure rate's been very high.
Understood. It's
Yeah.
been a very insightful conversation, Anthony. Again, I really
Thank you so
appreciate
much for
your
your time.
time and your thoughts, and I hope to speak with you again. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, David, and wishing you all the best and have a great rest of your day.
You too, Anthony. Be well.